This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all the news in the world of sports. My name is Ben Brown. Pauline is out of the studio today, feeling a little under the weather as I was on Friday. Seems to be like maybe a little cold or flu bug or something maybe going around here in Sacramento. Hopefully it's not the case, but I know a couple of people that have been sick recently, and Pauline being one of them now, so hopefully we can get things corrected sooner rather than later, and we'll all be back here, one big happy family here at the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Regardless, we are here recording the show today. I'd like to thank you again for listening here on a Monday morning. We're going to be talking a lot of stuff over the weekend, a lot of NBA talk some football. And that's where we're going to really lead off here, is in the NFL. The NFL Scouting Combine currently going on in Indianapolis, Indiana, at Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Indianapolis Colts play. A lot of the positions are done. I think it ends today. I think the defensive backs are the last position group to work out at the Scouting Combine today. So it's kind of the beginning of that NFL draft stage. We have pro days coming up. I believe pro days start this week for respective colleges. So it's really the start of that transition where we get to see what some of these college guys have to offer going into the NFL. Of course, the draft at the end of April in Philadelphia, always looking forward to that. It seems like we always have a little bit of fireworks going into the draft. Last year, we obviously had the number 1 and number 2 picks both be traded to new teams. We've seen the Redskins trade up to number 2 to get Robert Griffin III that year. So I'm really interested to see exactly what goes on within these next couple of months, because this is where it's going to start heating up. We'll see more and more mock drafts come out, some reports about certain players, teams don't like, GMs talking about them. So I'll be really interested to see what goes on here. But anyways, let's just talk about some of my takeaways from the Combine over the weekend, okay? So we're going to start off with, of course, John Ross, the wide receiver from Washington. He's getting a lot of headlines because he ran a 4.22 40-yard dash time, which is the fastest ever at the Combine. The previous record was 4.24 by Chris Johnson when he came out of Eastern Carolina. And this is great and all with John Ross, but he should have been wearing Adidas, because if he was wearing Adidas, he would have gotten an island. He was wearing Nike because he's set to sign with Nike. Had he been wearing Adidas, he would have gotten an island. So, unfortunately for Ross, he's not going to be the owner of an island anytime soon, but he is the owner of the fastest 40-yard dash time in the history of the NFL Scouting Combine. So you're probably telling yourself, oh my God, this is going to be fantastic. He's the fastest player we've ever seen. His numbers in college were pretty good last season at Washington. He had 81 catches, 1,150 yards, and 17 touchdowns. He also had 100 yards on the ground and 1 touchdown and 8 carries. So you're looking at yards from scrimmage, about 1,252 and 18 touchdowns. So, I mean, he had a very good season. I was really impressed with Ross this season. He really played well under Jake Browning and Washington, who got to the college football playoff semifinal, although they lost to Alabama. So I think he'll be an okay player. He measures out pretty well. He's about 5'11", 190 pounds. So he's kind of skinny, but he is kind of one of a bigger wide receiver, just under 6 foot. Can really probably do a lot of work in the slot, depending on where he goes. And he was projected to be a first-round pick even before his combine stats and workouts came out. So he was going to be a pretty good draft pick in the NFL. Going to go in the earlier part of the draft. So congrats to John Ross for going a 4.22. But let's talk about what exactly it means. I mean, to me, this really means nothing. There's been players that have come out of college, gone into the combine, absolutely tore up the combine, and did nothing in the NFL. There's guys who have done the exact opposite. There's guys who have stunk up the combine, ran bad, and tore up the NFL. I mean, Ray Lewis didn't have a great combine 40-yard dash time. He's one of the greatest middle linebackers ever and is really renowned as to be one of the quickest and fastest ones as well. Antonio Brown was a 6th-round pick. There were 21 wide receivers drafted ahead of Antonio Brown. You wouldn't take 21 players in the whole NFL ahead of Antonio Brown right now. I mean, yeah, he ran well at the combine, but everything else didn't really work out. Came out of Central Michigan, kind of a smaller program. Obviously, Ross come out of Washington, so that's a pretty big program. But nevertheless, I don't really think it matters that much what you do at the combine. I think there's a little bit that goes into it that I think is important. I think you want to go out there, do as best as you can, show off to these scouts and general managers what you have to offer, and put your best foot forward. But for me, guys could have a really great workout and not be great players. Or guys could have a really bad workout and be great players. In sports, it's either you can play or you can't play. Whether you work out good by yourself doesn't really implicate anything to me about how good of a player you are. I think it's all about how you are in the field. I would much rather look at game tape and film consistently against some of the top programs, elite defenses, elite offenses, whatever position you are, than to say, look at what you did at the combine or at your pro day. I'd much rather take a look at what you have done over a consistent 2 to 3 year basis in college. Because that gives me a better idea of what kind of player I'm drafting, what kind of player I'm getting. And to be honest, I think depending on where you get drafted and the system you go to makes a huge difference as well. I mean, Rob Gronkowski was a 3rd-round pick, I believe. He has had trouble staying healthy, but had he have stayed healthy or is going to stay healthy, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. New England seems to get production out of literally everybody they pick up. I think depending on the schemes and teams you go to, it really makes a difference. Everyone talks about the Cleveland Browns and all these quarterbacks they've drafted. And we'll get to the Browns in a little bit because I want to talk about Myles Garrett in the middle of this segment here. So right after this, I'll get to that. But everyone talks about the Cleveland Browns, how many quarterbacks they've gone through. Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, Tim Couch. The list goes on and on and on. All these quarterbacks they've drafted in the 1st round, none of them have panned out. I got to imagine that at some point, I'm not saying the player was necessarily great or not, but I've got to believe at some point the system they're in is just set up to fail. The coach they have is a more defensive guy, so he's not really there to develop a young quarterback. Or there's no one around him. Or you have a terrible offensive line, which was the case with David Carr in Houston. So I've got to think that I'm not putting solely that impact on the player itself, but maybe just the system and the scheme they're in. Look at the Browns. They draft high every single year. Who have been a couple of the Browns' best draft players recently? I mean, Joe Thomas has been pretty good on the offensive line. Joe Hayden's been a pretty good cornerback, although he's battled some injury issues lately. With the exception of that, I can't really tell you one. So I got to believe at some point, depending on where you go, makes a huge impact in how good of a player you are. If you have a great system around you, if you have great coaches to really help build you and really shape you into a great player, then I got to believe that helps. But if it doesn't, then I got to believe that it kind of stunts your growth a little bit. And I think that is something that really does happen in all sports. Okay, so let's get to the Browns now. So Myles Garrett, projected number 1 pick. He really, really worked out great this weekend at the Combine. He basically solidified himself as the number 1 pick overall, ran a 4.6 40 if you really care about that. For me, Garrett's obviously really quick, really explosive. And if I'm Cleveland, I'm taking him because a pass rusher is really just a huge impact player and a guy that makes a big difference. Look at what Von Miller did in the Super Bowl for the Broncos. He was the Super Bowl MVP because he consistently put Cam Newton under pressure, which not only obviously can create some havoc because you have sacks and then you have a chance of fumbles, but if you're consistently getting pressure on the quarterback, then the quarterback doesn't have a whole lot of time to throw the ball, and he knows that the pass rush is coming. He's got to get rid of it quickly. That leads to mistakes, leads to turnovers, bad throws, inaccurate throws, so it makes a big difference. So for me, I'd go Garrett number 1. Unless you get a monster offer to trade out of that number 1 spot, which is possible, then I would probably take Garrett number 1. He makes an impact. He's being compared a lot to Clowney. Similar times and workouts. He bench pressed a lot better, did Myles Garrett. I think 12 more reps. So maybe he's a little stronger. But he makes a big impact. I'd go with him number 1. You still have the number 12 pick in the draft, which you can maybe get a quarterback there. Obviously, that's the need. Quarterbacks worked out pretty well as well. Deshaun Watson being called by Andy Reid saying he was unbelievable. I've come out and said that I would take Watson, the number 1 quarterback in the draft. If I was going to draft a quarterback in this draft, I'm not big on any of the big 3, the 2 Deshaun's, and then obviously Trubisky from North Carolina. I'm not big on any of those 3, but if I were to have to take one, I'd take Watson. I know the interception numbers are pretty bad. I know he ran a lot in college and can't do that in the NFL. But simply put, the guy's a winner. Look what he did in the national championship game this year. Last year, he almost single-handedly beat Alabama. This year, he pretty much did single-handedly beat Alabama. The guy's a winner. He's a proven performer in big games. And the other 2, we haven't really seen that from them. So if I'm going to take one, I would take Watson. I do think Trubisky will probably be the first quarterback taken off the board because a lot of the scouts and general managers look at the prototypical type of quarterback. Watson does have the turnover issues, like I mentioned, and he's not going to be able to run as much as he did at Clemson. But I would still take Watson ahead of any other quarterback. But I would still try to see what the market is for Jimmy Garoppolo. I realize the Patriots came out and said they're not going to trade him. But if you give them an offer they simply may not be able to refuse, then I think they would trade him. I think Belichick would pull the trigger and make the trade. So it is still an option entertained for some NFL GMs and coaches and everything, but nevertheless, the combine, some other good performers. I know that Jabril Peppers, just really all over the field, whether it be linebacker or safety for Michigan, he really performed well at the combine. He looks like, to me, more of a safety. I don't think he's really strong enough to be a linebacker. Perhaps he can transition into that Deion Buchanan role, get drafted as a safety, and then move to an outside linebacker as he is for the Cardinals now. That is possible. I do see that being a possible comparison. I would look at him more as a true safety, though. Ran really well, but he's kind of not too big as far as weight is concerned. So I'd maybe look at him as a safety, but you can really just plug him in anywhere. He'll be a first-round pick. He really impressed me as well this weekend. The running backs, Fournette ran a 4.51. He's 240 pounds. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. Dalvin Cook ran a 4.5. I do like both those guys. I honestly like Cook better than Leonard Fournette, though, because I think with Fournette you have a little bit of a durability issue. Got injured his sophomore and junior year in college. And if you can't make it through a 12-game season in college, how can you make it through a 16-game season in the NFL? With basically less bye weeks. Because although LSU didn't play a weak schedule, there are opponents that you play that are a lot weaker than the Alabamas of the world and the Ole Misses of the world and Tennessees of the world. So you'll be playing a lot harder of a schedule in the NFL because this is the NFL. These are all NFL players. If you can't make it through a season in college healthy, what makes me think you can make it through an NFL season healthy? Dalvin Cook doesn't come with any of that baggage. So I would go with Cook ahead of Fournette, although I do think they'll both be studs in the NFL and be probably high to mid first round grades and talents. You have Christian McCaffrey as well. You have Joe Mixon, who was not invited to the Combine because of the domestic violence issue in 2014. But he's got first round talent. Looks like he might go round 3 or 4. I think he'll go a little higher. I think teams will definitely realize the talent's there and take a chance on him. You saw Dallas last year. In the second round, they went up and got I forget his name, Jalen Smith from Notre Dame. I'm sorry. They went up and got Jalen Smith. They knew he's going to have to miss the whole season. Teams are looking at maybe a third or fourth rounder on him, but they went and got him in the second round. So I think that is just going to be the same scenario here with Mixon. But it'll be interesting to see, like I mentioned. I'm really excited. The NFL draft is always something to be really excited about. There's always a lot of hype that builds around it. Although it is practically 2 months away at the end of April, it's never too early to start looking at it, and with the Combine going on, this is a good time for us to get some insight on some of these players. We'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about some basketball news. We have the ceiling is the roof on Saturday at North Carolina and Duke, and the Knicks turned back the clock yesterday in the first half. Talk about that and more after the break here at the Golden State Media Concept Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back into the Golden State Media Concept Sports Podcast, right here where the ceiling is the roof. So if you guys don't know what I'm talking about prior to Saturday's game between North Carolina and Duke. Obviously, renewing their rivalry, the Tobacco Road rivalry. Number 5, North Carolina, hosting number 17, Duke. The Tar Heels did win the game 90-83. So they did split the season series, and North Carolina did clinch the ACC regular season. So congrats to them. But Michael Jordan was at the game, of course, the most famous North Carolina alum, one of the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time. He was talking prior to the game about North Carolina football now being represented by Jordan Brand. So no real surprise there. But we saw Michigan be sponsored by Jordan Brand in football last year, now North Carolina. It's weird how that happened. But anyways, he was talking prior to the game about trying to really build up the North Carolina football program with Jordan Brand now, maybe try to get some more recruits and everything. And it makes sense. I mean, North Carolina's been a decent college football program the last few years. They seem to always be within the 15 to 20 range in the top 25. And now with the help of Jordan Brand, I would think it'd maybe get a little better. Not much, but they've done a good job of building it, and it's still a work in progress. So he was talking prior to the game about really building up the program. And I don't know if he meant to say, like, the sky's the limit or, like, the ceiling can't hold us or exactly what MJ was going for. But he said the ceiling can't, or I'm sorry, he said the ceiling is the roof. Well, I mean, yeah, it is. Like, good job. You got it. Good job, Michael. Great job. So, I mean, I thought that was pretty funny. It's definitely the laughingstock of the weekend. The Jordan crying memes are everywhere. I saw them all over the place. It was trending on Twitter Saturday night. And the sky is the roof. But according to Michael Jordan, the ceiling is the roof, which I mean, we didn't know already. So, anyways, North Carolina do win over Duke 90-83. And as I said, they clinched the regular season ACC championship, 26-6 overall. 14-4. Duke is 23-8 and 11-7 in conference, so not too great. I mean, the ACC is really, really competitive this season. You're looking at, honestly, at least 6 to 7 teams in the tournament, so they're really, really done a good job. The ACC is really, really tough. So Duke, I mean, perhaps playing that tough schedule will help them a little bit. Who knows? All right, so let's get to some of the specifics from this last night in the NBA. The Pelicans pick up a victory 105-97 over the Los Angeles Lakers. DeMarcus Cousins, 26 points and 15 rebounds, and Anthony Davis, 31 points and 9 rebounds. But surprisingly, they did get some contribution from other players as well. Jrue Holiday played really well. He had 20 points and 12 assists. Etuan Moore off the bench with 13 points. The Pelicans win by 8 over the Lakers. And now let's get to the Warriors. Obviously 0-2 without Durant, although that first game against Washington, he technically did play, although it was only a minute and a half. They returned back to their winning ways, 112-105 over the New York Knicks. Warriors finally playing good. Steph Curry, 31 points. Klay Thompson, 29 points as well. And they beat the Knicks by 7. So let's get to a little bit about the Knicks, because I talked about them maybe turning back the clocks in the end of the first segment. And last night, what they decided to do was kind of like a little retro theme in the first half. What they decided to do was not have any in-game music, not have any timeout music, not have anything on the Jumbotron for the first half. Nothing playing during the game. That way you can kind of take in the sights and sounds of the game and see about how it was back in the day. So, to be honest, it was kind of weird. I mean, to look at this and not see any like music like defense, like none of that. No timeout music, nothing. Just all simply quiet sounds of the game. It kind of reminds you of like, middle school. Even in high school, they have like the bands and everything, but like a middle school kind of vibe where it's just all quiet. You can hear the players a little bit. And to be honest, the players after the game said it kind of shook them off. Like it was something that they necessarily didn't say had an impact on the game, but just kind of threw them off, because these guys have been playing for years now. Night in and night out, you hear music and you hear people talking during the timeouts. You have like the crowd, the like t-shirt cannons, all the cheerleaders, all that stuff going on. You didn't have any of that for the first half, so I can see how it kind of threw you off a little bit. And Draymond Green after the game said that was pathetic. It was ridiculous. It changed the flow of the game. It changed everything. You get used to playing a certain way, and it completely changed it. To me, I think it was completely disrespectful to everyone, from NBA Senior Vice President of Entertainment and Player Marketing Michael Levine to the Warriors President and COO Rick Welts, and all these people who have done these things to change the game from an entertainment perspective. It gave the game a great vibe. That's complete disrespect. You advance things in the world to make it better. You don't go back to what it was bad. It's like computers can do anything for it. It's like going back to paper. Why would you do that? So it was ridiculous. So I think I can understand a little bit where Draymond Green's coming from. Obviously, he's not a guy who's afraid to speak his mind. I think he's maybe going out on a limb a little too far, though. I mean, to call it a disrespect to the game, I think that's kind of silly. But I can see where he's coming from as far as you change this to make it better, make it more entertaining, and you want to keep pushing forward that. But to be honest, this is only for one half. A little experiment, didn't really hurt anyone in this regard. I don't think it had an impact on the game. I don't think it had a different vibe on the game. I don't think any of that things happened. I think Draymond Green's maybe pushing the limit a little too much. But I can see how it would be a little weird. You're used to something so often for so many years, night in and night out. For it to be changed just like that would kind of throw me for a loop as well. But come on, Draymond, this does not have an impact on the game. It just had maybe a little viewing impact, a little weird, but other than that, I mean, nothing else really pushed it. I mean, let's not get too specific here. That wasn't that much. That wasn't that big of a deal. Seriously. Okay, so last night, before I take my last break, I'll get to one more thing. The Dallas Mavericks hosted the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Mavericks ended up winning that game 104-89, so pretty nice win there for Dallas. And we already know about the whole, I wouldn't want to say a feud, but difference of opinion between Russell Westbrook and Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban. Remember a few years back that Mark Cuban did not call Russell Westbrook a star. He did not think he was a star, didn't really have star quality. He thought there was a difference between like some really good players and stars in the NBA. So Mark Cuban and Russell Westbrook don't necessarily meet eye to eye already. But Cuban said something yesterday that, I mean, quite honestly, I gotta think that he just has honestly a problem with the guy, and he's maybe a little upset. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think he just has maybe a problem with Westbrook, because this is what Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban said about Westbrook. The media was talking about him, about his season and his historic production he's had this year, and he said, I think it's a toss-up as far as the MVP is concerned between James Harden and LeBron James, with Kawhi Leonard also in the mention. He said, I don't think Westbrook is in the mix to be the MVP of the NBA. What? Mark, I like you. I like your fire, your intensity, your passion. I even like you on Shark Tank. I think it's a great show. But what is your problem with Russell Westbrook? What do you have against Russ? You don't think he's a star. The guy's a stud. Whether you like him or not, he's a star. He shoots a little bit too much threes for me. Turns the ball over too much. But the guy's a star. He's a stud. He's averaging a triple-double. How is he not in the MVP discussion? He's averaging 31.7 points a game, 10.1 assists, and 10.7 rebounds. He's fantastic. He's literally going to be the MVP if he averages a triple-double to me. Now, a lot of people in the media recently have been talking about what exactly is the value of a triple-double. How important is a triple-double? Because a lot of people feel like if you look at a true MVP, you're looking at LeBron James. I mean, look at what he's done. He's literally meant everything to every single team he's been on. Cleveland are their best team in the world with him. He goes to Miami, they have the worst record in the NBA. He goes to Miami, they are in the finals 4 years in a row. They win 2 of them. He leaves, and they're just a playoff team. He comes back to Cleveland, they're in the finals right away. Yeah, he brought in Kevin Love as well, but still, and you're looking at true value, most valuable player, it's by far LeBron James, bar none. But that's not what the MVP is about. It's about who has really the best stats. Russell Westbrook right now has the best stats. I would go with James Harden because of his value to the Houston Rockets and what he's meant for that team, how he's really changed his demeanor along with Mike D'Antoni, the coach. But if Westbrook averages a triple-double, to me, he's got to be the MVP. There's only been one other player to do that. When you do something that historic that only one other guy has done, I think you have to acknowledge that. Is Westbrook going to keep it up? I mean, I don't know. He's only averaging 10.1 assists, 10.7 rebounds, so there is a little bit of leeway there. He's averaging 31 points, so he's not going to drop below 10 in that category. But he could still drop that average triple-double down, and I think he's going to. I don't think he's going to keep it up all year long. I think at the end of the season, he's maybe just going to get a little tired and really wear down, and I think it's going to be coming from the rebound category because he has the ball in his hands every play. He's going to get the points. He's going to get the assists, but his legs might get a little tired trying to do all that and get some rebounds. So I don't think he's going to be able to do it all year long, but nevertheless, he's having an absolutely historic season, putting the team on their back. They have a chance of getting to the number 4 seed. Right now they're in 7th, but he's doing it all for them. He's got to be in the MVP race. Come on, Mark. I don't know what your problem is with Russ, but leave him alone. He's in the MVP race. He's at worst second right now. Come on. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're just going to kind of throw in a lot of small sports stuff. Floyd Mayweather having some trouble in the UK this morning or afternoon over there. We have the World Baseball Classic starting. We had an upset already in the first game. And then we'll talk a little bit of more baseball news, actually. We have a person appearing on Game of Thrones, and we have an injury scare for the Red Sox that's really not so bad. All that after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So Floyd Mayweather had his car set on fire in England, according to many reports. It was a hotel outside of Birmingham, England hotel. It was just basically a vehicle with labeled Money Team. There was no one injured in the blaze, according to West Midland Police at the Parks Regis Hotel on Sunday morning. But investigators are still looking to what happened. As far as the whole blaze and incident is concerned, we're not really sure right now. But, I mean, he had his house broken into in Vegas last month. So, I mean, not really good. Not a whole lot of good stuff happening with Mayweather right now. But as far as the super fight is concerned, I'm still hoping. I'm still praying. I'd honestly love to see it. I don't know if it's going to happen or not because nothing's really come out recently. It seems like, I mean, Anthony and I talked about this. It seems like one guy will say something, the guy will retaliate. We don't hear anything for a couple of months, and the same thing happens again, and we start talking about a super fight again. Mayweather and McGregor. Like, let's just get it done already. Seriously, we all want to see it. You guys are going to make a ton of money. Let's just get it done. Come on. Stop waiting. Let's just see it happen. Let's see a boxing match. Let's get boxing on the map one more time. All right, well, anyways, we're going to transition to baseball really quickly before we end the show. A couple of big storylines here in baseball. The World Baseball Classic started today in South Korea, and we already have our first upset. That's the host nation, South Korea. They get upset by Israel in extra innings. Israel win 2-1 in the 10th. Israel will be playing later tonight at 7 o'clock Pacific time, of course, over in Korea. It's the next day, so it's not like they're playing necessarily a doubleheader or anything, but they'll be playing Chinese Taipei as we get going here in the WBC. Looking at the favorites, I mean, you got to throw a lot of the Latin American nations in there. Mexico, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, United States as well. Looking forward to what the U.S. can do as we get ready towards the baseball season. We're about a month away. I'm really, really excited for baseball. And a couple of guys who are excited, one of them in particular is Noah Syndergaard. Of course, he's the Mets pitcher. He's huge. He's 6'6". He's 24 years old. He has the nickname of Thor because of his long locks of blonde hair. And while he may not be appearing on any Marvel movies soon as Thor, he is going to be appearing on an episode of Game of Thrones. He's supposedly a huge Game of Thrones fan, and he's going to be appearing as an extra on an episode of Game of Thrones. Making a cameo appearance is Noah Syndergaard on Game of Thrones. So I'm not a Game of Thrones guy. I've never watched it. I'm not a big TV guy in particular. I live a busy life, so I don't really get around to watching a whole lot of TV. I know it's a great show. Everyone raves about it. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, look out for Noah Syndergaard upcoming this season, apparently. But, I mean, I'm not a big Game of Thrones guy, so I won't be watching that. But anyways, let's transition to our last story here before we end the show here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, talking about David Price. David Price of the Red Sox, of course, last year didn't have too great of a season, although the Red Sox did win the AL East. They did lose in the first round to the Cleveland Indians. This offseason, really making some moves, picking up Chris Sale in the trade deadline. Or not the trade deadline, but picking up Chris Sale by trade from the White Sox. So now you have Price and Sale, a couple of former AL Cy Young Award winners. You have the reigning Cy Young Award winner in Rick Porcello. So you have a nice little three-headed monster there. But David Price having not too good of a season last year, really looking for a bounce-back year. But he might get off to a slow start because Price last week was scheduled to start in spring training. He did miss his start because of some elbow soreness. Elbow swelled up a little bit. Elbow is that troublesome area for pitchers. Shoulder, elbow, finger, really looks bad for pitchers. But after getting some interest and some looks at his elbow, it looks like it's not going to be that bad. There's no timetable for his return, but Price is not going to have surgery, which is huge. Because if you're looking at elbow surgery, you could be looking at being out the whole entire season. For a team like Boston, now they brought in Sale, but if they're going to really make some noise this season in baseball, they're going to need to have Price healthy. They're going to need to have him pitch good as well. Last season he pitched terribly, as I mentioned. Porcello was 22-3. He's not going to do that again this year in my eyes. There's no way he can replicate that. I'm sure Chris Sale, if he stays healthy, is going to have a huge impact at Fenway Park. But they're going to need more come playoff time. We saw what the Indians did. They ran through everyone in the American League because of pitching. Corey Kluber and company pitched fantastic, got some opportunistic hitting. The Red Sox have that. They had the best offense in baseball last year. They're going to lose David Ortiz, but they're still going to have a monster offense. They got a lot of great players, Mookie Betts being one of them. He was an MVP finalist. They're going to need the pitching staff healthy, though. So for Price, not sure about a return yet, but avoiding surgery is absolutely huge because that gives him a chance to at least be effective this year. If he has elbow surgery, it could be done. So he says they were like, your elbow is extremely unique. It found a way to kind of heal itself. This is what he told reporters after his meeting with Dr. James Andrews and Neil Atrach. I've heard that before, but not from guys that have done the surgeries they've done and looked at as many elbows as they've looked at. It's just good to hear it from the two guys, so it really felt good. So Price, obviously that's a good start. He'll probably start the season on the disabled list, though. So, I mean, the season's a month away, so if he's already going to be on the disabled list, you're thinking about next 6 weeks. The deal's at least 15 days, so not really a good start for David Price, but he is avoiding surgery. He's 31 years old. I guess that's got to be a great sign. All right, guys, that's going to end the show for today. I'd like to thank you once again for listening. My name is Ben Brown. Pauline hopefully will be in the studio tomorrow. I know she's still battling a little bit of sickness, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but hopefully she'll be in the studio tomorrow. Nevertheless, we are signing off here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Have a good day, and we will see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.